Welcome to the second episode of the Character Course. Now, last week we were talking about learning, and one of the things we noticed is that we learn best when our learning has a transcendent purpose. In other words, a reason beyond ourselves for learning what we need to know. We learn best when we're thinking about who we might become or the difference we might make in the world. And this is the core of discipleship. It's the essence of following Jesus, learning to make a difference. And that kind of learning contains an irrepressible hope. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we build a bridge from who we are now to who we will become in future? How do we draw a line between how things are now and how they may be in future? That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about hope. Hope comes into play when your circumstances are dire, things are not going well for you, or there's considerable uncertainty about how things will turn out. Hope arises precisely within those moments when hopelessness or despair seem just as likely. If we turn to the Bible looking for hope, we may be confused by it, particularly if we look in some of the Old Testament passages that seem to glorify violence or militaristic action. But when Paul writes about the Hebrew Bible, he says that all of it is there to give us hope. That's his purpose. He writes, "For whatever was written in former days was written for our instruction, that through endurance and through the encouragement of the Scriptures we might have hope." In the original language of the Old Testament, there is no one single word for hope. There are about 16 words that we translate as hope, and all of them mean other things too. Things like wait, and gather, and bind, and trust. And all these words basically show us that hope isn't just one thing. It's a rich tapestry of experience. It's a multicolored rainbow of ideas in our minds. And these words for hope actually occur in some of the most cited scriptures in the entire Bible. Like Jeremiah, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future." Or Isaiah, "They who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." But ultimately, one great hope stands in the background of the entire Bible, without which none of the narrative really makes sense. One day, the world will be awash with goodness. The divine qualities of compassion and justice will be available and evident to everyone. It's a powerful and transformational view of the world. We could call it big picture hope, the hope that one day the entire planet will flourish. And this kind of hope has a huge resonance with what is most fundamental in us as human beings. In fact, some psychologists have even gone so far as to rename us as a species, calling us Homo prospectus. In other words, that it's fundamentally human to be concerned about the future. And it could even be that our future, our perception of the future, our idea of what's about to happen is even more important than our understanding of what has happened. In a sense, the future that calls us can be just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the past that has defined us and driven us. Other psychologists have called this basic hope, the belief that somehow reality is trustworthy and benevolent. That even if at times it appears as if it's void and chaos and evil, it's actually not really like that. In fact, we can even reformulate the gospel, the good news of Jesus, in this way. Some people have said that thanks to Jesus, what we now know is that the universe is on our side. what about small picture hope? When it comes to character, the question isn't so much, is there a big picture hope that makes the world go round, but rather, is there an everyday hope that can get us out of bed in the morning? What does hope look like in everyday life? Shane Lopez, one of the leading figures in hope in psychology, used to do a workshop exercise in which he got people to indicate with their hands where their hope came from. Some people would put their hands to their head and they'd say, I think my way into a better future. Other people would put their hands to their heart and say, I feel my way into a better future. There's a yearning, a drive, a desire for a better future. Other people would point up and they'd say, my hope belongs to a spiritual realm. It comes from the holy. It comes from what's bigger than me. Hope could come from different places. But the interesting thing is that whether people pointed to their head or to their heart or to the holy, the thing that they believed about hope was pretty much the same. Hope is hope wherever it comes from. Shane Lopez said that people of hope believed 4 things. Firstly, they believed that there was a better future. No matter how bitter the present may be, there's a better future ahead. Secondly, they believed that they had the power to get there, that they and the people around them could act and move and do things that would bring that better future about. Thirdly, they believed there were lots of different ways to get there, that there's many different ways into the future that's good. And fourthly, they realized that all of those ways would have obstacles. Getting to a better future wouldn't always be a clear, easy path. Ultimately, what he found was that even the greatest, most ultimate, most cosmic version of hope has to be worked out step by step, piece by piece, little by little in everyday life. The way he put it was like this: hope is created moment by moment through our deliberate choices. It happens when we use our thoughts and feelings to actively pursue what is possible. When we choose hope, we define what matters to us most. When we turn to the New Testament, big picture cosmic hope and small picture everyday hope collide in the person of Jesus. Not only is he the Messiah, God's answer to the pain and cruelty and suffering of the world, but he's also a particular human being, meeting particular human beings in everyday life, bringing hope to a grieving widow here, or a paralyzed man there, or a bleeding woman here, or an outcast minority there. In Jesus, God's hope for the transformation of the world becomes present in a human being. He is cosmic hope embodied. We don't have time to go through all 90 occurrences of the Greek word for hope, elpis, in the New Testament. But let's take a look at one that tells us a little bit about what hope looks like in your life and mine. All the way through his letters, Paul the Apostle ponders and reflects on how it is that Christ brings hope to the world. In one example, he writes to the Colossians, the mystery that has been kept hidden for ages and generations, but is now disclosed to the Lord's people, to them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. He seems to be saying that to me, as a Jew, looking at the history of my people, it hasn't always been clear exactly how our great hope for the transformation of the world is to be realized. But now, looking at you guys, I realize that it's Christ in me, Christ in you, Christ in all of us as a community that will bring about the fruition of seeing the divine presence in every part of reality. That's the great hope in which we're called to believe. Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's a promise. So that's hope. That's the promise. Cosmic hope, everyday hope. They come together in Jesus. Jesus lives in us, and that's our hope. That's God's hope of transforming the world positively through people. Great, but what does that actually mean? Or, as my kids would put it, and this affects me how? Hope occupies the space somewhere between impossibility and certainty. If something is absolutely certain, we don't need to hope for it. It's going to happen anyway. If something is impossible, then hope becomes an illusion. Hope deals in possibility. It deals with what could be. The hope we are talking about is a fire. It burns the fuel of promise in the oxygen of possibility. This is the picture that Paul paints. What would it be like if today, wherever you are, whoever you're with, you remained uniquely you, and yet you lived with the grace and authority and love of Jesus? What would that be like? How would things be different? How would the world be changed as a result? This is the way Paul sees it. It's almost as if he's saying that the hope of the world lies in a community of people that live like that.